Sarah Martinez smoothed down her navy dress for the third time, her hands trembling as she stood outside the small Italian restaurant in downtown Chicago. At 32, she'd sworn off blind dates after a string of disasters that left her questioning if genuine connection even existed anymore. But her best friend Emma had been relentless, promising this time would be different. "Just give Daniel one chance," she'd pleaded. "He's kind, Sarah, really kind, and that's what you need." Now, watching couples stroll past in the golden autumn evening, Sarah wondered if kindness was just another word people used to describe someone who wasn't attractive enough, successful enough, or interesting enough. She almost turned around, almost walked away, but something, maybe loneliness, maybe hope, kept her feet planted on that sidewalk. Inside, she spotted him immediately. Daniel Chen sat in the corner booth, wearing a simple gray sweater that had seen better days and jeans that were clean but faded. He stood when he saw her, knocking over his water glass in the process, frantically grabbing napkins to mop up the mess. A waiter rushed over with a tight-lipped smile that suggested this wasn't the first time someone at that table had caused a scene. "I am so sorry," Daniel said, his cheeks flushing. "I'm not usually this clumsy." "Well, actually, that's not true. I am usually this clumsy. I'm just making it worse, aren't I?" Despite her reservations, Sarah laughed. There was something disarming about his honesty, the way he didn't try to play it cool. "It's fine," she said, sliding into the booth. "At my last blind date, the guy answered 3 work calls before our appetizers arrived and then asked if I'd mind if his ex-girlfriend joined us for dessert." "You're joking." "I wish I were." They ordered the cheapest items on the menu. Sarah noticed Daniel's eyes lingering on the prices, the way he quickly flipped past the entree section to the pasta dishes. When the waiter suggested the special, a $40 sea bass, Daniel politely declined. "The spaghetti sounds perfect," he said. Throughout dinner, Sarah found herself genuinely engaged. Daniel worked as a business consultant, he explained vaguely, but he lit up when talking about other things. He volunteered at a homeless shelter every Saturday morning. He'd spent 6 months teaching English in rural Vietnam. He teared up when describing the elderly neighbor he checked on daily since her husband died. "You must think I'm ridiculous," he said, wiping his eyes after sharing how he'd helped the woman, Mrs. Patterson, set up video calls with her grandchildren, crying over a 78-year-old woman learning to use an iPad. "I don't think you're ridiculous at all," Sarah said softly. In a world that rewarded ruthlessness, here was someone who felt deeply, who cared genuinely. It was rare, maybe even radical. When the check came, Daniel reached for it immediately. Sarah caught a glimpse of his wallet, worn leather, practically falling apart, with what looked like maybe 3 bills inside. "Let's split it," she offered. "No, please. I asked you out." "Well, technically Emma asked you out on my behalf, but still." "Daniel, really, I don't mind. I've got it." He smiled, but she saw the calculation in his eyes as he counted out cash, leaving barely enough for a tip. Pride, she recognized, the kind that wouldn't accept help even when it was clearly needed. As they walked out into the crisp October night, Sarah made a decision. "Would you like to grab coffee sometime?" "My treat." The relief on his face was palpable. "I'd really like that." Over the next 6 weeks, they fell into an easy rhythm. Coffee dates at the cheap diner near Sarah's apartment where refills were free. Walks through Grant Park, watching dogs play and street musicians perform. Movie nights at her place because streaming was cheaper than theaters. Daniel never suggested expensive restaurants or Broadway shows or any of the flashy dates Sarah had grown accustomed to from men trying to impress her. Instead, he brought thoughtfulness. A paperback book by her favorite author that he'd found at a used bookstore. Homemade soup when she mentioned feeling under the weather. His time, his attention, his genuine presence. Sarah, who worked as a social worker making a modest salary, found herself paying for most things. She didn't mind. There was something refreshing about being with someone who didn't measure his worth by his bank account, who didn't need to dominate conversations with stories of business conquests and financial wins. But her friends worried. "He's using you," her colleague Jennifer warned over lunch. "No grown man should be that broke. What does he even do?" "He's a consultant. He's between major projects." "For 6 weeks. Sarah, come on. You deserve someone who can at least afford to take you to dinner. The doubt crept in, unwanted but persistent. Sarah started noticing things. Daniel's vague answers about his job. The ancient flip phone he carried. The way he always suggested free activities. Was she being naive? Was kindness just a cover for someone content to let her carry the financial burden? The turning point came on a frigid November evening. They were walking back from the diner when they passed a young mother sitting on the sidewalk, a sleeping toddler bundled in her arms, a cardboard sign reading, "Anything helps." God bless. Sarah watched as Daniel stopped, then crouched down. "Hey," he said gently. "There's a shelter 3 blocks north, St. Anthony's. They have beds available tonight and childcare. It's warm. They'll feed you both." The woman looked up with hollow eyes. "They turned us away last week. Said they were full. Not on Sunday nights. I volunteer there. I can call ahead right now. Make sure they hold a spot." He pulled out that ridiculous flip phone and made the call. Then he did something that made Sarah's breath catch. He took off his jacket. His only jacket, the one she knew he wore every day, and draped it around the woman's shoulders. From his wallet, he pulled out what looked like his last $20. "Daniel, you need," Sarah started. "I need to do this," he said simply. They walked the woman and her child to the shelter, Daniel shivering in just his sweater, refusing Sarah's offer of her coat. At the shelter entrance, the woman turned back, tears streaming down her face. "You're an angel, both of you. I won't forget this." As they walked away, Sarah couldn't stay quiet any longer. "Daniel, I know things are tight for you financially. You didn't have to give her your last $20. He stopped walking, turned to face her. In the streetlight, his expression was unreadable. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. Can we go somewhere warm? Somewhere we can really talk?" Her heart sank. This was it. He was going to admit he was broke, maybe ask her for a loan, maybe confess he'd been evicted and needed a place to stay. She braced herself. Okay. They ended up at a 24-hour diner. Daniel ordered coffee for them both, then took a deep breath. "I haven't been completely honest with you. Here it comes," Sarah thought. "My full name is Daniel Chen Park. Maybe you've heard of Park Technologies." Sarah stared at him blankly. "We develop AI software for healthcare systems. I'm the CEO. We went public last year. I'm worth," he paused, looking almost embarrassed, "somewhere around $300 million. The world tilted. "What? After my divorce 3 years ago, I realized I had no idea who actually cared about me versus who cared about my money. My ex-wife. She left me for my business partner the moment we hit a rough patch financially. Before we made it big. I've been doing this experiment, I guess you'd call it. Living modestly, dressing down, seeing if anyone would." He trailed off. "See you for who you are," Sarah finished, her voice barely a whisper. "I know it sounds crazy. Maybe it is crazy. But Sarah, these past 6 weeks have been the most genuine connection I've felt in years. You never asked what I could buy you. You never cared about status or appearances. You saw me struggle to pay for dinner and you didn't judge me or lose interest. You just saw me." Sarah's mind reeled. The worn wallet, the flip phone, the cheap clothes, all carefully constructed. So tonight, that woman, the $20. "I keep limited cash when I'm living this way. Keeps the experiment honest. But I called the shelter on our way here. Made an anonymous donation that'll cover her and her son for 3 months, including job training programs. The jacket, that one was real. I actually liked that jacket." Sarah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I don't understand. Why tell me now? Why not keep going?" "Because I saw you giving away your last $20 3 weeks ago. To that street musician with the sick dog, remember? You thought I didn't notice, but I did. You're a social worker making maybe $40,000 a year, and you gave away money you needed for groceries. Because you cared more about that dog getting medical care than about your own comfort." His voice cracked. "You're not kind because someone's watching or because you can afford to be. You're kind because it's who you are. I couldn't keep lying to that. I won't keep lying to that." The tears came then, for both of them. "I thought you were using me," Sarah admitted. "My friends said. I know what they probably said. And they were trying to protect you. That's what people who love you do." He reached across the table, taking her hands. I'm not asking you to suddenly be okay with this. I know it's a lot. I know you might be angry that I deceived you. But I needed you to know that every moment we shared, every conversation, every walk in the park, that was real. The only thing I hid was my bank account. Sarah looked at this man she'd thought she knew, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not poor, not rich, just human. Flawed and hopeful and trying his best to find something real in a world that often felt transactional. What happens now? That's up to you. We can start over, with full honesty this time. Or if this is too much, if you feel too betrayed, I understand. I just couldn't keep pretending. Not with you. You deserve someone who shows up authentically. Even if it took me too long to get there. Sarah thought about the past 6 weeks. The laughter. The comfortable silences. The way he listened when she talked about difficult cases at work. How he'd shown up with soup when she was sick, even though buying the ingredients probably meant choosing between that and lunch for himself, or so she'd thought. The kindness that wasn't performative or transactional, but just existed, constant and quiet. I have one question, she said finally. Anything. The flip phone. Really? He laughed, the tension breaking. I actually hate that thing. I've been dying to get my smartphone back. Okay. Then here's the deal. Full honesty from here on out. No more testing. No more experiments. Just 2 people figuring this out together. Just 2 people, he agreed, squeezing her hands. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, dusting Chicago's streets with white. They walked out together into it. Neither rich nor poor in that moment, just 2 humans who'd found something increasingly rare. A connection built not on what they could get from each other, but on who they were willing to be for each other. 3 months later, Sarah would meet Daniel's colleagues and navigate the complicated world of wealth she'd never imagined entering. She'd insist on keeping her job, her apartment, her independence. He'd support every choice, never trying to change her. They'd volunteer together at St. Anthony's every Saturday morning. And that young mother and her son. Daniel's company would eventually hire her in their administrative department, paying for her education, breaking a cycle that might have otherwise continued for generations. But on that snowy November night, none of that mattered. What mattered was the choice they both made. To see beyond surfaces, to value character over comfort, to believe that kindness wasn't weakness but the strongest foundation any relationship could have. In a world that often told them to guard their hearts and led with skepticism, they chose differently. They chose hope. They chose each other. And that made all the difference.